My husband was a British soldier. He died, and I was denied a pension for not being British enough. My name is Layla. I was born in a small town on the outskirts of Casablanca, but I've lived more years in England than I ever did in Morocco. I only speak English with an accent when I'm nervous. I cook Sunday roast better than many British mothers-in-law. And I love this country, despite everything. But in the eyes of some, I'm still a stranger. Someone who is never British enough, not even to bury the love of her life with dignity. I met James in a military hospital while I was working as a nursing assistant. He had returned from Afghanistan with a shattered leg and a smile that defied pain. I was the girl changing bed sheets, adjusting for lines, bringing overly hot tea. But he spoke to me like an equal, even when most people looked down on me. "I like how you pronounce schedule," he told me once. I blushed. I thought he was mocking me. No, really. It sounds better that way. He insisted on small things, that I sit with him during lunch, that I tell him about my childhood in Rabat, that I share what I like to read. And I, who had learned not to expect much, found myself wishing his recovery would take longer. We got married in a simple civil ceremony with barely 10 people. His mother didn't come. She sent a note that said, "I hope you're not using this for papers." James tore it up in front of me without saying a word. I loved him more in that moment than ever before. We moved into a small flat in Kent. I kept working at the hospital, and he began teaching military strategy at an academy. He had pain, yes, and nightmares sometimes, but he never complained. His pride was made of steel, just like his prosthetic leg. The morning I found him on the floor, pale, cold, breathless, I'll never forget it. I called emergency services. I screamed. I knelt beside him and begged him not to leave me. His heart had failed. They told me it was quick, that he didn't suffer. But I did. And I still do. That's when it all began. I believed the state he served would take care of me, that there would be some kind of support, at least to get through the following months. But when I went to inquire about the widow's pension, the first thing they said was they needed to review my eligibility. I gathered documents. Marriage certificate, residency papers, proof of cohabitation, witnesses, photos. It felt like I had to convince them I had loved him, as if my grief was suspicious. The letter arrived 2 weeks later.
Cold. Dry.
Your application has been denied due to failure to meet the requirements outlined in Section 4B, British Cultural Identification of the Spouse. You may appeal this decision within the next 30 days. British Cultural Identification. It didn't say it was illegal. It didn't say my marriage wasn't valid. Just that, according to their interpretation, I didn't fit their mold of a widow worthy of assistance. And then I understood. To them, I was a foreigner who didn't qualify. Not even after everything he had given for this country. I called. I cried. I asked for explanations. They told me it was a new internal policy, that they were reviewing cases more rigorously, that it was a measure to prevent fraud. They offered me a brochure on employment reintegration for immigrants. James died for this nation. And I, who picked up his muddy boots every day, was now treated like a potential burden, like a suspicious case. The neighbors stopped speaking to me. Maybe they didn't want to feel uncomfortable. Maybe they thought I had married him for convenience. "Sorry about your husband," they murmured in passing. No one asked if I needed help. No one brought soup. No one waved hello again. I went alone to the cemetery on his birthday. I brought a white flower and a letter I had written for him. I sat on the bench in front of his grave, that cold stone with his name misspelled the first time. James Atkinson, British soldier, loyal husband. I had to fight for them to add husband. I cried until I was dry. Until I felt there were no more tears left, only a burning rage inside me. Because it wasn't just about money. It was the message. They were telling me I wasn't worth anything, that my love didn't count, that his sacrifice belonged to them, but I was disposable. One day, while cleaning his things, I found a box with medals, letters, and photos. In one of them, James was in uniform, smiling. On the back, in his handwriting, "For when I'm no longer here. You made me a better man." That was all I needed. I decided I wouldn't stay silent. I wouldn't hide. Not for the pension. Not for others' pity. But because he deserved to be honored. And because I deserved to exist without asking for permission. I started writing everything down.
Day by day.
Conversations, documents, humiliations, failed appointments. And I began searching for other widows who had gone through the same. I found them. Some were living in shelters. One in Birmingham had sold her wedding ring to pay rent. All with different stories, but the same institutional response. They do not meet the cultural requirements. And that made me even angrier. It wasn't just me. It was a system that shook your hand when you were useful and turned its back when you no longer served them. Today, I sleep in the same flat, surrounded by memories and bills. I haven't paid the gas in 2 months. I eat rice with whatever I can find. I work cleaning houses. My body aches, my soul burns. But I won't give in. And even if the world doesn't listen, I will shout my story. Because being British enough should not be a requirement to be treated with humanity. And this is just beginning. When a door closes in England, no one tells you they're also closing the windows.
They simply look away.
They stay silent. They carry on as if you don't exist. They had already taken the pension from me, but what followed was worse. Isolation. Social punishment.
Contempt.
One winter morning, I went to the welfare office. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no other option. My contract as a nursing assistant had ended months earlier, just as James had fallen ill again. I had devoted myself to caring for him full-time. No benefits, no savings, no family support. Only debts. Only cold. I sat with my folder on my lap, trembling. Partly from the weather, partly from shame. The man at the window looked at me, without fully lifting his head. I gave him my name. He waited. Then he wrote, "Widow, foreigner, pending review." He didn't look me in the eye. "Do you have permanent residency?" he asked, emotionless. "Yes," I replied. "British passport?"
No.
"I have a Moroccan passport." He typed something else. Then exhaled through his nose, annoyed. "We'll need an interview to verify that you're not trying to take advantage of the system." And he handed me a paper with an appointment for the following month. Just a piece of paper. Not a word of comfort. Nothing. I took the bus home. The driver asked me to show my ticket twice. The second time he yelled, "Stop pretending, lady." My eyes burned. Not from the yelling, but from the looks of the other passengers. No one said anything. Only a young girl lowered her eyes as if ashamed to be part of that scene. Still, the silence was worse than any insult. For weeks, I survived on packets of rice and lentils from the community store. I had no heating, only blankets. I slept with my jacket on. One day, while washing the dishes, my hands went so numb I dropped a cup. It was James's favorite. It broke into 3 pieces. I sat on the floor and cried. Not for the cup. For everything. I went looking for work, any work. They offered me a job cleaning bathrooms at a private golf club. Night shift. "The pay's low, but it's work," they said. The manager looked at me with disgust when I told him I had been a nursing assistant. "Moroccan women are good for this," he remarked. "They don't complain." I stayed quiet. Because I needed the job. Because sometimes dignity is swallowed if you want a hot meal. That night I cleaned dried vomit from carpets and traces of substances from the men's restroom sink. I left at 5 in the morning, walking because I couldn't afford a taxi. It was snowing. My shoes were falling apart. When I got home, I found another letter. From the Ministry of Defense. I clung to it like a rope of hope. But it said the same as the others. "After reviewing your case, we have concluded you do not meet the required cultural profile. We suggest seeking community support." Cultural profile. My husband was white, English with a military lineage. I was brown, accented, without connections. That was the profile that didn't fit. I felt like an administrative error, like a stain someone wanted to erase. Still, I refused to remain in the shadows. I contacted the other widows. One from Sierra Leone, one from Pakistan, another from Poland. Each with a different story, but the same ending. Institutional abandonment. We spoke on Zoom. We cried. We listened. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. One of them, Amina, told me something I've never forgotten. "If they don't recognize our pain, we will recognize it among ourselves. Even if it doesn't change the world, it changes how we live it." That gave me some strength. I went back to the academy where James had taught. I wanted to request a letter of reference, proof that our marriage was real, that I had been by his side in his final years. But when I walked in, the receptionist looked at me uncomfortably. "We can't give you that information, ma'am," she said. "Besides, you're not listed as part of the staff." I wasn't staff. I was his wife. "I'm sorry. We can't help you." Not even a letter? Not even acknowledgement. "We're not authorized." I left without saying more. I felt the humiliation like a hot stone in my chest. A man who served his country, who educated young soldiers, and even his name seemed worthless now that he was gone. I began to fear going out. Not because of physical danger, but because of the constant sense that everyone looked at me as if I didn't belong. In the supermarket, the security guard's eyes followed me. In church, the whispers were constant. She was the one who married the soldier. How does she live now? Probably just came here for papers. Even the woman who used to sell me flowers began treating me differently. One day I asked for a small bouquet, something to take to James's grave. She handed it to me, but whispered, "Hopefully this isn't for public sympathy."
I didn't understand right away.
Excuse me? Some people fake grief for pity. And you, well, you were always very quiet. I froze. He was my husband, I said. She didn't reply. That night, I had a nightmare. I was at a military ceremony. All the men were standing in formation. James was there too, dressed in formal attire. I tried to approach, but an invisible barrier kept me from moving forward. He couldn't see me. I screamed his name, but no sound came out. I woke up sweating, my throat tight. I had started to lose my voice from swallowing too many words. One day, while I was cleaning the golf club bathrooms, I overheard two men laughing about a news story. Did you see that widow complaining because they didn't give her a pension? Probably another foreigner trying to take advantage. I locked myself in the stall, shut the door, and cried in silence, pressing a dirty rag against my face.
I didn't know if they were talking about me.
But it was enough. The following week, I was fired.
Staff cuts, they said.
Even though I was the only foreigner on the shift. They left me a check for £78. Not even enough for rent. I went home and found the final letter. The appeal had been rejected too. Your relationship with the deceased does not qualify under the framework of cultural and national belonging stipulated by the military recognition system. Cultural belonging. It didn't matter that I slept in the same bed as him, that I stood by him during his last operation, that I watched over his fever, that I cleaned the blood from his scars. I didn't belong. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. And yet, one afternoon, when there was nothing left in my pantry, someone knocked at the door. It was the girl from the bus. The one who had looked away weeks ago. She brought a bag with bread, eggs, rice, and a small candle.
I didn't know what to do that day.
But I knew it was wrong. I didn't know what to say to her. I started crying. "I'm not rich," she said, "but if you need help, I can come clean with you. And if you write your story, I know someone who could share it." And that was enough. Because even in the mud, the contempt, the rejection, and the loneliness, there are seeds. I don't know if they'll bring me justice. I don't know if I'll be able to keep this flat for much longer. But I know my voice isn't completely broken. And if someone, even just one person, listens to what I have to say, then not everything is lost. And for now, that's my lifeline. Exactly 6 months after Tom's death, the condolence letters from his comrades stopped coming. No one called anymore. No one wrote. Only the bills remained, the bank reminders, and the creaking of the stairs as I went down alone with Oliver's breakfast in my hands. The only one who kept coming was Frank, the friend who promised Tom he would look after us. A man with a square jaw, a low voice, and large hands. He brought bags with bread, some milk, even once left 20 pounds in the kitchen without saying anything. I knew it was out of pity, and that pity hurt more than the hunger. One day, he told me to try again with the Veterans Office. That there was a new officer in the county, someone named Mr. Hargrove. Reluctantly, I put on my coat, walked to the bus stop, and traveled with Oliver asleep on my chest. I had nothing left to lose. The new office wasn't far from the previous one, but it was a whole different story. Large windows, a desk with a computer, clean carpet. The man who received me looked at me like I had walked into his house without permission. "Your name, please?" he asked without even looking up. "Sophia Hale," I answered. "I'm here about my husband's pension case. He was part of the Engineers Brigade, served for 9 years. He died in service." Yes, the case is closed," the man interrupted. I froze. "But they told me there was a new officer. I wanted to check if—" "Mrs. Hale," he said in a cold tone, "your request was reviewed by the pension office and rejected for administrative reasons. You do not meet the integral nationality requirement. Your union was not registered under the Ministry of Defense framework. We cannot make exceptions." I wanted to ask what integral nationality meant. I wanted to scream that I had married Tom in a legal ceremony, with witnesses, with documents. But he was already looking at me like I was a nuisance. Like carrying a baby strapped to my chest was a visual offense. I left without saying goodbye. Outside, the wind was sharp enough to cut your lips. I walked several blocks aimlessly until Oliver started crying. I sat on a bench, cradled him, and for the first time in a long time, I cried without trying to hide. Weeks passed, then months. And things got worse. People in town started looking at me differently. The grocery store owner overcharged me one week, and when I noticed, she told me if I couldn't pay, I should go back to where I came from. A man at the bus stop referred to me as the foreign widow living off dead soldiers. Someone one night wrote with chalk on the sidewalk outside our house, "Leave. This isn't yours." I kept working, cleaning houses, whatever little I could. But after that message on the sidewalk, I lost 2 clients. One told me her kids felt uncomfortable with my accent. The other didn't even bother to explain. I thought about going back to my country. I thought about selling everything and leaving. But how could I explain to Oliver that his father died for this country, and now we were abandoning it because they didn't want us here?
No.
Something inside me resisted. A deep anger. A love bigger than the pain. Then one day, Frank came to the house with a box of things they had returned from the camp where Tom served. "They told me this was left in storage," he muttered. There were old boots, a notebook, a dirty cap, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a letter written by Tom. Not a love letter, but a list of contacts, names, emails, with a note. "If something happens to me, these people can help you." Good people. There were names I didn't recognize. Some I did. One of them, Sarah Whitmore, journalist. "I owe her big," he had written. I kept that list like it was gold. That night, when Oliver fell asleep, I turned on Tom's old laptop, connected to the neighbor's Wi-Fi, thankfully still unsecured, and started searching. I found Sarah Whitmore. I sent her a simple message. I told her the basics. I attached a photo of Tom and Oliver. I didn't expect a reply. The next morning, I had an email.
I'm so sorry, Sophia. Tom was a great man. Can we talk?
"I'm abroad, but I'll be back in a week." I can't promise anything, but let me try. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or scared. A journalist? How could that possibly help me? But I had nothing left to lose. 5 days passed. Then 6. The week was up. And then Sunday night there was a knock at the door. It was her. No cameras, no microphones. A woman in her 40s, wearing a raincoat and a serious expression. "I can only stay a few minutes," she said. "But I need to see your paperwork." I showed her the ministry's letter, the marriage certificate, Oliver's birth record, the pension rejection.
She didn't speak.
She just nodded and took notes in a small notebook. Before she left, she said something that still echoes in my mind. "This isn't new, but your story hurts, and sometimes that's enough." I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but 3 days later, the school called me. There was a letter waiting for me. When I picked it up, I saw it wasn't from the school. It was a plain white envelope, no sender. Inside, a single piece of paper, typed, "Stay out of what doesn't concern you. We already took what wasn't yours. Be grateful." My hands trembled. I looked around. No one. The school principal pretended to know nothing. And it was then, right then, that I knew I had touched something deeper than I thought. And still, I had no intention of stopping. The anonymous letter kept me awake for days. Every time I went to the market or walked through town with Oliver, I felt watched. I didn't know if it was my imagination or if someone was really staring from the windows. Greetings turned to whispers. Doors no longer opened with the same kindness as before. Even Frank noticed and offered to let me stay at his house for a few weeks.
But no.
I wasn't going to hide. Not after everything Tom had given. Not after everything they had taken from me. Sarah Whitmore came back a week later. This time, she wasn't alone. She arrived in a small, gray car with another woman beside her, a photographer. They asked permission to take some pictures of my house, Oliver's room, a photo of Tom on the mantelpiece. Nothing too invasive. "I'm writing an article about forgotten wives of the British Army," she explained. "You're not the only one, Sophia. But your story is visceral. It has heart. And that's why I don't want to rush this. What do you hope to achieve with this?" I asked. Sarah lowered her gaze. Pressure. "Sometimes, the truth makes more noise than justice. And I want them to make noise for you." It seemed like a strange answer, almost cynical. But I agreed. 2 weeks later, the article was published. Widow, mother, foreigner. The story the ministry doesn't want told. It came out in a digital newspaper but also in print. On the cover, a photo of me holding Oliver in the rain. The story was well told. No exaggerations, no embellishments. Just the truth. My marriage to Tom, his service, his death, my struggle for the pension, the rejection for not being British enough. The day it was published, I received dozens of messages. Emails from strangers, women who had gone through the same thing. Some offered legal support, others just shared their pain. One even wrote, "Thank you for giving a name to what we feel." I felt less alone. But the hardest blow came 3 days later, when I received a call from a ministry office. A man's voice, polite but tense. Mrs. Hale, we'd like to speak with you regarding the information recently published. We'd appreciate it if you could come to London. We'll cover the costs. It's important. My heart was pounding. I agreed. The train ride to London was silent. Oliver slept on my lap. I just stared out the window, watching the countryside pass by, trying to convince myself that something was finally going to change. The office was in a tall, cold, modern building. A woman in a blue suit, with thin glasses and a mechanical smile, greeted me. "This way, Mrs. Hale," she said. The office they took me to had a gray carpet, blank walls, a large table, and a leather-backed chair. 2 people were seated. One of them, a man in his 50s, hair slicked back with gel, distant eyes. "Mrs. Hale, thank you for coming. I'm Robert Langley, Director of the Family Liaison Department at the Ministry of Defense. My colleague is Dr. Haynes, from the Social Assessment Division. They offered me water. I declined." Langley cleared his throat. "We've reviewed your case thoroughly, and in light of the article published by Miss Whitmore, we've decided to reopen your application." I felt the air leave my body. "Are you going to give me the pension?" Langley looked at me with that cold expression only bureaucrats have. "Those who've never felt the weight of what you've lost. We're not authorized to promise results. But we can offer a special review. It's not common, but it's not impossible either. You need to meet certain criteria, and one of them involves the original documentation of your marriage." "What do you mean?" Langley slid a yellow envelope across the table. Inside, a copy of my marriage certificate. "This document," he said, "has an unusual detail. It was issued in a foreign delegation, not under the British consular register. That complicates the process." "Complicates?" I replied, feeling my throat tighten. "My husband died with a flag on his chest, and you're questioning a stamp?" "It's not personal, Mrs. Hale. It's procedure." I stayed silent. Langley leaned toward me. "However," he added, "there is a solution. You could file a new application as the mother of a British citizen. Your son is British by birth. You could re-enter the country under a different status and restart the process." "Restart? After all this? What we're aiming for is to regularize your situation." And he paused, to keep the story from escalating more than necessary. And then I knew what they wanted.
To silence me.
Bury the article. Change the narrative. But before I could respond, Dr. Haynes intervened. "Mrs. Hale, were you aware that your husband had an account registered abroad?" The question hit like a thunderclap. "Excuse me? We've discovered an account in Thomas Hale's name at a bank in Gibraltar. An account that was active until recently. It was not listed in his official declaration. Were you aware of it?" I was in shock. "No, he never told me about that." Langley narrowed his eyes. I saw his demeanor shift. Now he studied me with suspicion. "Are you sure you knew all of your husband's financial activities?" The atmosphere turned heavy. It was no longer a meeting. It was a covert interrogation. I stood up. "Thank you for your time. Mrs. Hale, if you leave now, we might consider whatever you want." I buried my husband. I won't bury his memory too. And I left. Outside, London was gray. Oliver was asleep again. And inside, I was burning. On the train back, I remembered something. One night, 3 months before Tom died, I saw him writing in his notebook, the same one that was in the box Frank gave me. He was in the kitchen, very late. I had come down for water, and he shut it abruptly. "What are you writing?" I asked. "A plan in case everything goes wrong," he replied. When I got home, I went to find the notebook. Page after page, technical notes, passwords, names. But on the second to last page, a message written in blue ink, slightly crooked, as if it had been written in a rush. "If something happens to me, don't stay silent. The truth doesn't always save, but it burns. And sometimes, burning is all that's left for those who are forgotten." That night, I decided I wouldn't give up. A week later, I received an unexpected call. It was Sarah. "Sophia, I need you to hear something," she said. She turned on the speaker.
Static.
Then, a man's voice. "Yes, she's exaggerating everything. The ministry wants to shut that case down, but if she keeps talking, it's going to cost us more than it's worth. The strategy is to offer her something small with conditions. Keep it from escalating. Get her to sign something." Sarah ended the audio. "It's a leaked recording. Anonymous, but real. It's not legally admissible, but we can make it public. Are you willing?" I took a deep breath. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. "Do it." The article was updated. This time, with the recording, with my statement, with photos of the notebook, with everything. And that morning, before I could even see the impact, there was a knock at my door. An envelope. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Tom, seen from behind, speaking with a man in uniform. The date handwritten, 2 weeks before his death. On the back, a message. Your husband knew things he wasn't supposed to. You are not British enough. You are too close to something you should have let go of by now. And just like that, I understood this story wasn't over yet, because Tom's war was now mine.